Okay, thank you everyone for being here and joining us in this panel discussion. Uh, the topic that we have today is, are organizations creating culture or controlling behavior? I think most of this comes from the engagement that corporations are having with their employees and some of the feedback that a lot of people who are, especially youngsters who are working in some of the new corporations, they have a very different or changed attitude towards their employers. And probably the employers have also changed their attitudes in the last 10, 20 years. You must have noticed this. So, what we are trying to understand is that what has happened to organizations' culture over the last couple of decades, let's say, especially I would say post pandemic, and is it going into the territory of culture creation, or we are more and more about controlling the or micromanaging what the employees are doing? So please, you can start here because you have a lot of connection with new age tech disruptor type of companies. So what do you think on these lines?
Yeah, and I think, as you said, I currently work with a lot of startups, a lot of tech disrupting companies. And if I get, share both the perspectives, one from the startups and one from also the employees. Today, employers are struggling to have talent, to have the right, growth in the company. So we have startups, who are on a very high growth path where the founder will interview and, unfortunately will ask questions on especially with women candidates that, are you planning a family? Because that decides their hiring cycle. Now that unfortunately also shows the culture and the mindset of very founder led companies or individual led companies. And at the same time, they would say they would harp upon about that we have Monday evening parties every day in our office. Now, for a lot of new age founders, a lot of tech companies, they would believe that, okay, having a party culture in the organization, having a balance of fun and work is part of creating a great culture, which unfortunately it is not. But at the same time, I think there is so much of change which is happening in the external world today, where companies are also struggling to sort of keep up with the changes which are happening, especially as you mentioned about after pandemic. There's that shortage of talent. Sometimes talent sees money, perks, incentives, and sometimes talent sees, the culture of the company. And I think there are, especially the new age companies are often struggling to find that balance between, should we look at, just incentivizing and giving money and forget about culture, or should we really focus on culture? So I think that's the perspective from the new age tech disruptors.
So he talked about individual being the face of these companies, and then they often hijack the cultural process also. Whatever that particular individual thinks, that is going to resonate in the culture of the organization. So how do you think, is this going to be a problem for some of these, individual oriented companies, or that's just a part of the, what they offer?
If you read the latest approach that happened around the 70 plus work hours and the 90 plus work hours, right? So, those are very seasoned professionals saying something like this. There's got to be something beneath that, why they're saying it, right? And if you really delve into the depth of the statement, it's probably like a cry for help, because there is a big difference between their thinking, their expectation of discipline, of work culture, and the kind of work culture that is prevailing in their organizations today. So I think the mindset shift is very diverse between those kind of expectations and the delivery that is coming from the current lot of people at work, right? But it's largely, I mean, if you think about it a lot, it's largely led by, uh, on the one hand, discipline and, very straight jacketed thinking and work expectation. And on the other hand, a lot of qualitative, critical thinking kind of people, right? So this huge disparity between what is in the leadership level versus what is in the people level, it's probably causing a lot of dissonance and a lot of difference. Now you've got to lead them, but how do you lead them? It's a hard problem to solve.
Agree. I mean, if I had to summarize there's a generational gap now that we have. The expectations from the senior leaders who have operated in a different environment, and now the young folks coming in, they have operated in a completely different environment. Their aspirations, their levels of patience, everything is quite different. Siraj, I think you have a something definitely.
Yeah, I kind of claim a birthright on culture because the industry I come from is where culture was born, which is agriculture. And what is culture? The definition is cultivation, right? So I believe that every organization, and what do you cultivate? When you're cultivating, it is different from wildly sowing something, right? It is certain amount of planning, shaping, behaviors, shared values. So a crop is sort of cultivated with every plant getting the same water, same seed, same fertilizer or pesticide. And somewhere that sort of uh, conditioning or some similar alignment is important for any organization, but it takes time. Now, we talked about, one element which is being talked about in agriculture, which is what is actually true for corporate world, is we're talking about sustainability. So farmer looks after his field because he wants the soil to be sustainable and for generations to keep growing more and more. Organizations, when they build culture, also build with this thing that this is what will sustain the organization. An organization which has a good culture where people have shared values and common goals and good behaviors or behaviors which are normal or common to the organization. I mean, you talked about a behavior where or an organization where they party a lot. I been in the corporate world for 35 years, so I actually am mostly the old generation. So that those are all things which, when the culture is strong, the organization's ability to deal with adversity is also higher, which is the same thing we say in agriculture. When if the field is well kept, it will weather the storm better. So I think culture is important. Where, coming back to the second part, whether it is being used to control, right? Now that is something which is to a certain level important. I mean, I was talking to someone and saying that after all, every team, you have 10 teams playing the IPL, they will all wear the same. I mean, each team will wear their own shirts. You don't want someone to go and say, no, I like the KKR shirt and therefore I'm going to wear their shirt. So you don't want to give that autonomy. But at the same time, there is this part of control, and we don't have to look far. When I was running a company 10 years ago, I used to tell my team that pay attention to your children at home because they are the next generation. So we have actually, the first stage of control happens in family. हमारे घर में ऐसा नहीं होता है, हमारे घर में वैसा नहीं होता है. Your grandparents will start telling you, and that is where the culture starts, the control, and this is how the organization is being controlled. But as you rightly said, that the world, and I believe so very strongly, that the exposure level, the knowledge, the information that is available to the generation today allows them to see different cultures, different ways of working, and therefore empowers them to actually question what they see. And for an organization to play both, which means to have a culture, but also to respect or at least listen to what is happening outside. And this is something that I propagated when I led an organization, was to bring down the cost of candor. Which means that employees do not fear sharing what they're seeing outside or not liking what is inside. And the organization still retains the right to accept or not, but at least giving them a space or giving them an opportunity to speak.
I'll continue from this point itself. When an organization is going through a transformation, and you're leading a transformation, and now the issue that you're facing is, let's say, this cultural shift about to happen. And how do you how do you create a system, or how do you create a uh, environment where anyone can speak out against the system, and how, and then yet maintain the level of confidence in the system itself? So how do you create a system where anyone can speak out against the very top and whatever they're feeling wrong, and yet the sanctity of that system, the discipline, everything else is maintained?
That's a very interesting question because I come from leading large multinational cultural company, and always for any organization, we have nice, fancy words of values. And I can challenge most of the companies, they don't do a good job of bringing those values up front. They're on the walls, nicely put. They're on the PowerPoint presentations, nicely designed. But what the good job they don't do is the moment any new entrant in the organization, the first thing they do is give them the work and say, this is the training. That is a bad start. You need to start with what is the culture and which the values the organization is based upon. A lot of people talk about employee friendly as a value, integrity is a value, right? A lot of values people talk. Caring is a value, innovation is a value. But if you don't bring those values and build your recognition system, the R&R, based on the values, then people start behaving according to those. To me, culture, which is the values and the behaviors put together defines a culture. If every individual in the organization is behaving based on the values of the organization, culture will form according to that. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't give enough importance to this critical element of the values. Because, as he has rightly mentioned, the value system at home is what you bring to the society. The societal values come to the corporates. Corporate is not formed in isolation. It is the people who are building it. To me, I think that is where you need to fundamentally start creating that scope and ambiguity. And your other question which you asked, there should not be fear in terms of asking questions. And as a leader, I stand in front of thousands of people. As a freedom of speech, what people also forget is the freedom of ownership and responsibility. That is very important. It is because of a freedom to ask something, you don't ask a stupid question or a disrespectful question. So there's a lot of things, is a fine line between how much freedom do you want to tolerate, right? That happens, we see in our regular society as well. But when the people are coming into corporate, you need to ask a question in a certain manner because there's someone seen is standing there and you can't be disrespectful asking it. If someone is correcting that and the same generation thinks that they don't think they're correcting, they feel that, oh, I'm stopped, right? There's a difference between the correction, which is very important. The generation should know that you can ask the question, but the way you're asking is different. And the situation at which you're asking questions is also very different, right? So a lot of things, and this is where I come back. I go and teach in a lot of universities. I tell people that as much as a young generation, you're learning skills. That is where you're having weightage. It is not a value-based learning. And that is missing right now. If you're not a value-based person, your skill only will take you an extent possible, right? And that is where it came back to the point where I'm saying any organization start reiterating the values and the foundation, the vision the company has started with. And that's where I will conclude saying that how do you really create a visibility and also participation from every employee there?